group of Chinese monks were trying to live forever. That's not a joke. That's history. Somewhere around the 9th century, alchemists in China were mixing together charcoal, sulfur, and a strange white mineral called saltpeter, hoping to cook up an elixir of immortality. What they got instead was a substance that hissed, sparked, and occasionally took off a few eyebrows. They weren't trying to build a weapon. They were trying to cheat death. And instead, they stumbled onto the thing that would end more human lives than almost anything else in history. So how does a failed immortality potion turn into the atomic bomb? That's the next 4 minutes. Here's the path we're taking. We start in a monk's lab in ancient China. We move to the battlefields of medieval Europe. We land in the trenches of World War I. And we end in a desert in New Mexico, where a flash of light changed what weapon even meant. Every stop connects to the last one. Nothing here is random. But first, the basics. What actually makes something explode? At its core, an explosion is just a reaction that happens fast. Fuel burning so quickly it creates a shock wave instead of a flame. That mixture the monks made, later called gunpowder, was one of the first substances humans found that could do this on command. And once you can control an explosion, you can control force. That single idea is the seed for everything that follows. At first, gunpowder wasn't even a weapon. It was used for fireworks, for signaling, for ceremony. But someone eventually asked the obvious question. If this can launch light into the sky, what else can it launch? By the 1200s, that curiosity had turned into primitive tubes packed with powder, hurling projectiles at enemies. It was crude and unreliable, but it worked just often enough to matter. And once something works often enough in war, people don't stop improving it. They obsess over it. That obsession spread gunpowder technology from China to the Middle East to Europe within a few centuries. Once European blacksmiths got their hands on it, they didn't just copy it, they engineered it. Cannons got bigger, barrels got stronger. By the 1500s, castles that had stood for hundreds of years were falling in hours. The problem was, castles were built to survive arrows and catapults, not explosive force. So military architecture had to evolve just to keep up. That's the pattern that repeats through this entire story. A new destructive tool forces a new defensive answer, which forces an even more destructive tool. Fast forward to the 1800s, and chemistry took over from craftsmanship. Scientists weren't just refining gunpowder anymore. They were inventing entirely new explosive compounds. Nitroglycerin was one of them, and it was terrifyingly unstable. It could detonate from a bump on a wagon wheel. That instability is actually what pushed Alfred Nobel to invent dynamite, a version stable enough to transport safely. Nobel became rich beyond belief from a product built for demolition and mining, and deeply uncomfortable knowing exactly how it was also being used. By World War I, explosives weren't just weapons anymore. They were the entire war. Artillery shells powered by industrial-scale chemistry could kill from miles away without either side ever seeing each other. Entire landscapes in France were reshaped by explosions alone. The battlefield had scaled from one soldier with a musket to nations with factories dedicated purely to producing the means of destruction. And that industrial mindset is exactly what led to the final leap. In the 1930s and 40s, physicists discovered that splitting an atom's nucleus released energy on a scale no chemical explosion could touch. This wasn't gunpowder anymore. This was rewriting the rules of physics into a weapon. The Manhattan Project brought together the era's greatest scientific minds racing in secret to answer one question. Could this theory become real? In July 1945, in the New Mexico desert, they found out. A blinding flash, a shockwave felt for miles, and the birth of the nuclear age. So we go all the way back to where we started. A handful of monks in China trying to bottle eternal life. They never wanted a weapon. They wanted the opposite of death. But that accident planted an idea that never stopped evolving. Every failure sparking a fix, every fix sparking a bigger consequence, until it arrived at a weapon capable of ending civilization itself. Maybe that's the real lesson here. History's most destructive inventions rarely start with someone trying to build a weapon. They start with curiosity, with mistakes, with people chasing something completely different. And it's the slow chain of accidents and improvements, not one evil genius that quietly rewrites the world.